The Silent Cabin. Jake was an avid hiker, always seeking new trails and remote locations to escape the bustle of city life. So when he heard about an unmarked path deep within Raven's Hollow, he couldn't resist. Locals warned him against it, murmuring about strange disappearances in a cursed cabin. But Jake waved off their superstitions. The trail was overgrown and nearly invisible, but Jake was determined. As dusk fell, the trees grew denser, their branches like skeletal arms reaching for the fading light. Soon he came upon a clearing. In the center stood a decrepit wooden cabin, its windows black and gaping like empty eyes. Jake hesitated. This must be the cabin everyone warned about. He considered turning back, but the sun was already setting, and the forest was unnavigable at night. He decided to stay. The inside of the cabin was sparse: a broken chair, a crumbling fireplace, and a small table. Jake lit a lantern he always carried, setting it on the table. Dust motes danced in the dim light as he unrolled his sleeping bag. As he settled in, the silence was oppressive, thick enough to feel. No insects chirped, no wind howled, just stillness. At midnight, Jake woke suddenly. The lantern was out and the air was ice cold. He sat up, fumbling for his flashlight. That's when he heard it. Faint footsteps on the porch outside. "Hello?" Jake called, his voice cracking. No response. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a slow, deliberate creak as the door opened on its own. Jake froze. The doorway was empty, but he felt watched. His flashlight flickered, then died, plunging him into darkness. A whisper came from the corner of the room, low, rasping, and unintelligible. It grew louder, more insistent, but Jake couldn't make out the words. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice shaking. The whispering stopped. Then from the same corner, a deep, guttural voice replied, "You shouldn't have come." Jake bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. His lantern reignited on its own, casting a dim light across the room. In the corner stood a figure, a tall, shadowy silhouette with no discernible features. Its presence radiated malice. "You were warned," it said, stepping closer. The shadow seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally, its form flickering like static. Jake backed away, his hands scrambling for anything to defend himself. His fingers found an old iron poker near the fireplace. He swung it wildly, but it passed through the shadow as though it weren't there. The figure stopped, tilting its head as though amused. Then it spoke again, its voice echoing inside Jake's skull. "You're staying. Forever." Jake screamed as the lantern exploded in a flash of light. The next morning, a group of hikers stumbled upon the cabin. It looked abandoned, as it had for decades. Inside, they found no signs of life, except for Jake's backpack and flashlight, covered in dust. On the table was a single message, scratched into the wood. "Don't stay after dark." No one ever saw Jake again.